Hello and happy new year, one and all, and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. A new year means a new season, and we say goodbye to 2024 to season 3, and we say hello to 2025 and season 4. And for starters, we are still in the holiday mood, and today we're going to be reviewing Red One, starring Chris Evans and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. It's a new year. I mean, we're slowly growing. If we can sort of hit the accelerator and get more likes and subs and views, we definitely appreciate that. And we've got a lot in the pipelines. I mean, we're going to be doing more reviews and more trailer reactions, but we're also going to be exploring different types of movies. We'll be going back to the Regency era in Bridgerton. We'll be taking a look at Soviet films and see if whether or not they match up with their Hollywood equivalents or if they even exceed expectations. And we might take a trip up to Canada and take a peek at Schitt's Creek. And in terms of thespians, we'll be diving more into Shakespeare. And in Myth, Magic, and Movies, we'll be taking a look at more darker things, everything from tragic heroes of Greek mythology to cosmic jewelry and what roles they play in the film narrative, to whether or not we can figure out what makes a good horror film. But all that is to come. So today, a few days after the new year, Lee, I mean, we're getting ready to, I guess, make our resolutions and break them. But one resolution we are never going to break is remaining committed to this podcast. So the movie we're taking a look at today is Red One, and this kind of flew under my radar. I really didn't know anything about it until I saw an ad for it while I was watching something else on YouTube. But I was slightly interested in the premise.
It's a Christmas movie, right? So
yeah, and in watching this movie, it's one of those things where sometimes after we review movies that require a lot of depth and a lot of thought, like Gladiator 2 or Alien Romulus, it's kind of good to turn your brain off once in a while and just go with the flow. So that's what we do here with Red One. So Lee, why don't you go ahead and take us into I can't even keep a straight face here. I want to go ahead and take us into the movie that is Red One.
Yeah, I'm trying really hard. Like, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer. I don't want to be the cringe of Christmas with this one. But by golly,
well, I mean, the holidays are over, so I mean, really doesn't matter anymore, does it? So,
I mean, still, it's it's a Christmas film. You have to kind of take it for what it is. But yeah, I think this one didn't really strike a lot with me. So. So we start off, right? We get Jack, right? So Jack is one of our two leads. This one played by Chris Evans. You see him as, little kid, and he's, spoiling the idea of Christmas to his cousins, right? So that's how it kind of starts off. So you kind of see him as, he steals a set of keys. So, he's kind of, maybe a troubled kid, right? He's got a few things going on. And I think I like how we kind of fast forward to him as an adult. And he's still just stealing anything he get his hands on. And one of the things that absolutely made me cringe was there's kind of this image of him after he goes into the institute that he's doing a job for, and he comes out and there's this baby, and this baby has this red lollipop that's still wrapped up, of course, because God forbid that some parent gave their kids some unwrapped lollipop, and I'm like, oh my god, are they gonna make him steal candy from a baby? Is this really what we're gonna see? And granted, they don't show him physically stealing it, but you do see him with it later on, and you hear the baby crying in the background. So,
well, I mean, it's not much of a fight if you're gonna steal candy from a baby. I mean.
I couldn't believe that that's kind of, I think, the opening joke. Like, I don't even know if I would call it a joke because nothing's really transpired so far. But it was just like, I know you're trying to make him just be unlikable, and I guess he did that. But I could not think of anything more cliche than stealing candy from a baby. But that was the level of writing that we got for this movie. So we got Jack, and then afterwards we get to meet the other part of our duo, which is a guy, Cal, played by Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Cal is a security guard for Santa Claus, right? And he takes his job super, super serious. You see him plenty of times, like looking at items he's receiving to make sure it's safe. So he's obviously very much a part of what he wants to do. Santa Claus is played by J.K. Simmons, who I always thoroughly enjoy. I think he kind of just always adds such a cool thing for his character. But we see that very not subtle at all how I guess poorly people act, especially during the holiday season. So we see like people fighting in the crowd. This guy is comically stealing candy canes. Some guy is like, I don't know, maybe trying to steal a candle. There's some lady screaming about essential oils. And it's just so heavy-handed with what it's trying to show us. I don't think that there's any subtlety at all with this. So yeah, what'd you think about the hammered in idea of Christmas just being this, kind of this terrible holiday that brings out the worst in a lot of people?
I mean, it's kind of in your face, really, and it's a bit over the top. I mean, everything about this movie is over the top. Like, they really
Yes.
have to dial everything up to 11, from the way that the North Pole is portrayed to, Cal taking his job seriously, to how the characters interact with one another. I mean, you definitely don't. I mean, we all know for a fact that the holidays can be a bit weird. I mean, we really don't need to have scenes of people literally fighting each other for that. I mean, if you do want to see that, then I would recommend watching Jingle All the Way. I think that movie better captures the craziness of the holidays than what you see in Red One.
Yeah, I agree. And funny you should mention the North Pole, right? Because we find out that J.K. Simmons, you think that maybe he's just like a ball Santa, but lo and behold, it is the actual Santa. So this is the real life Santa that we have in this universe, right? And they go to the North Pole, and it just looks. I get that they're trying to go for this idea that this is what the North Pole would look like if you could actually have somebody that was able to do Santa Claus's job.
Mm-hmm.
But for a Christmas film, right? It just looks ugly. For any Final Fantasy fans out there, I did make the joke that it looks a lot like Midgar, which, if you've seen Midgar, hopefully you get a chuckle out of that. If you don't know what that is, then
it's got a bit of a Blade Runner vibe to it.
Oh yeah, it's super like it's very industrial. It's got like this very much of a steampunk vibe. It obviously doesn't really, I think, capture the magic. We think of the North Pole. I think a lot of people like to think about Santa and some of these elves. And I guess for this, they're trying to create this narrative that, look, this is what it takes for, all these, magical creatures to come together to make Christmas work.
Yeah, they're trying to make it hardcore and believable,
Yes.
But but to go back to what I said earlier, I mean, it's just so over the top and everything, really. Like,
yeah,
they really just want to nail in your face, like, hey, this is a possibility. Santa could have, turn the North Pole into some industrial complex where they make toys and deliver them and all that stuff. And they're like logistics companies, and they have flight plans, and they cooperate with governments around the world. It's like, just tell a Christmas story. You don't need to go into all the details, dude. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, like I said, if you were making something like Blade Runner, for instance, then yeah, maybe it would do you some good to put in some of those details. But this is one of those movies that you watch for one day out of the year and then you forget about it. So
yeah,
you really don't need to. You really don't need to go into put too much of an effort into portraying something as innocuous as the North Pole when you're really not going to see that much of it anyway.
Oh yeah. There's very, very little exploration of it. You're really not there, and I don't think you ever, outside of like kind of your introduction and then kind of the scenes that follow, you don't see a whole lot of it. It's more of a kind of a bird's eye view, so to speak, of it. So Santa's going back to the North Pole, and this is on Christmas Eve. So obviously, a lot got to be going on between now and Christmas. And we see our villains appear, right? And it's thanks to our buddy Jack, right? So he provides coordinates to some people, and unbeknownst to him, he's providing coordinates to the North Pole. So we see our villains, they come in and they kidnap Santa, right? And this is where I had some issues, right? And I know I've not really been giving this a huge endorsement, but this is really where, to me, I just was like rolling the eyes in the back of my head. So we see Santa, right? We get to see Santa, and he's, this really, he's buff Santa, right? So if anyone's seen J.K. Simmons, guy obviously takes really good care of himself. I know The Rock doesn't really need much of an introduction as far as his physique. So it's kind of like, you kind of represent these guys. And I like how for Santa, he just kind of gets kidnapped by the villains off screen. Like, you don't see him putting up a fight. Like, so it's, why show him working out and doing all this stuff if you're then going to make his character like so feeble that you don't even give him screen time to show him doing anything.
I mean, they don't even trank him or anything like that. They just go and grab him.
Yeah, he's just gone. Like there's no understanding of anything that happened. He's just like, oh nope, he got kidnapped. And this whole sequence absolutely drove me insane, right? So he gets kidnapped, right? So we see Cal on the speaker, and he's talking to all these people, right? And he's like, oh, who's got eyes on red? And everyone's like, oh, we don't have it. We don't have it. And I'm like, okay, why would you not have a guard that's there with Santa on the most critical part of the year, right? It's just, I realize I'm nitpicking a damn Santa Claus film, right? But still, like, if you're going to show this much detail, then you better be able to back it up.
I mean, well, they also saw the fact that we're talking about a North Pole where everything is kind of, industrialized and computerized, so there's probably like a camera everywhere. So you're telling me that no one has a feed showing what happened to Santa?
Exactly. Like no one sees like this vehicle driving up through the North Pole, right? Because they're in the middle of the North Pole, right? So like just nobody saw him like driving up. And I love how like they have these barriers that they could put up throughout the whole North Pole. But they somehow can't seem to just, just put up all the barriers, right? Like, why are they trying to, like, put up separate barriers over time? Like, just put up all the barriers. They won't be able to escape if they're all up. But, I guess you could make the argument, maybe if you put up the barriers, it might, the driver might drive into them and hurt Santa. I don't know. I mean, could you even hurt Santa? I have no idea either because, that's never... We have no clue.
Well, but think about it. If he could be kidnapped that easily, he could probably be hurt that easily too. So
I guess so. I guess maybe that's why they showed him not being able to kick ass, is because they just want us to be able to expect him to just die on anything. So you have this like huge city. You have like all these surveillance people. Like, I mean, there has to be so many that we see on the screen. And their whole like chase sequence, right, with this fleeing vehicle that they believe Santa's in. They sent out 2 guys on snowmobiles. 2 guys, right? This is a huge city, right? There has to be, I couldn't even venture a guess, tens of thousands, right? I mean, we see all these people here, and your response to this is you have 2 guys on a snowmobile. I just couldn't believe. I'm just like, this has got to be a joke, right? Like, who's thinking that this is practical? Like, don't show us all this if you're gonna have the response be so absolutely nothing. So lo and behold, the 2 snowmobile people are not enough for this one thing. But luckily, Cal is able to, use one of the snowmobiles, and he's able to track it down. He creates like a little avalanche to stop it, and no Santa's there, right? So now we're thrown off, and we see a plane flying away. So that's supposed to be the insinuation that the vehicle, the Snowcat, was a decoy, and the real Santa Claus is taken away. So Luca, just maybe help settle this down a little bit. But what did you think of our exhilarating chase sequence with the Santa kidnap?
Over the top.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing. Like everything they do, sorry to sound like a broken record, but everything is over the top. Like, I just can't get over the fact, like, they just want to take a simple kidnapping story and just overdo it on everything, and also do it in a way that's completely unbelievable. You would think that, in the North Pole, where you have talking polar bears and presumably snowmen and elves and all that stuff, you would assume that there would be a lot of people out and about on the streets, so there'd be a bit of a commotion. But I just find it eerily weird that there's just nobody out there sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
That's a
it's
great
like
point.
it's a big city, but where the hell is everybody? I mean, surely not everybody's working at the same time,
Mhm.
But I don't know. I guess Santa just wants everybody to have a job, and I guess that's what you get. There's nobody out and about on the streets, which I guess will make it easier for Cal to go after the kidnappers and Santa. But from a story standpoint, I just find it rather unbelievable that you have this huge city where there's barely anybody out there. It's kind of like the scene from 28 Days Later where where the lead character's just walking through the streets of London and there's like
Yeah.
nobody there. It's
Mhm.
just a bunch of like crap littered all over the streets. That's what it made me think of.
Yeah, it's like you create this whole environment that you want us to be able to look at, but you can't even like show that this place is actually lived in, right? Like,
Yeah.
to your point, I guess everyone's just
It's
works in the shop all day.
I mean, it's almost like
it.
it's almost like a Potemkin village, really. It's just there for display. It's not really meant to be used or meant to really function as a proper city. It's just there for decor, I guess.
So, yeah. So I'll get off of this, but it
It's
absolutely was one of those things that drove me crazy. So
it's very noticeable. I mean, it's really hard to
yes.
kind of not focus on it.
Yes, I agree. At least for myself, right? I can agree with that. Other people might be able to be like, it is what it is, but it was very, very distracting. So, so we have our Santa kidnapped, and they have to figure out how to get Santa back, right? So they use these trolls, and I couldn't help but notice, right? The trolls, they look just like computer nerds. Like one of them's got like glasses and he's got like these like messed up teeth, and you see like another troll that's got this like really kind of like I guess like a little soul patch almost, and he's like eating chips that are splashing all over the place. And I'm
Yeah.
like, is this like supposed to be a joke about trolls that are not gonna like the film, or did you like go with like a ridiculous stereotype of like computer nerds?
It's very
That
meta when you think about
yeah,
it.
like I just was like, are you are you trying to subtly say anything? Like I don't know. I found that to be very off-putting. I don't know if that was supposed to be funny or they're trying to take some shots at people, but it is what it is. But the trolls, I guess, figure out that Jack, also known as the Wolf, helped with Santa Claus being captured, although he didn't know it at the time what he was doing. So I guess that kind of puts a little bit of, a saving grace for our character, because if he was a part of it, probably would be harder to like him. So you might as well just make him not know what he was doing during this interaction. So they go out, they get Jack, and they kind of they capture Jack, and this is where we get our team up with Jack and Cal, who are our two characters that are going to hate each other and bicker the whole time and make up at the end. Because that's how all these films work, and I would say that they don't do anything different. The one thing I will bring up, though, right? So we get to learn a little bit more about this world, and we see the Headless Horseman, right? And I actually kind of I dug the design of it, right? And I think that's maybe one thing positive I could say about it is I kind of thought these designs were cool, and it kind of made me think like, you know what? There's probably like a lot of interesting things that you could do with other characters that kind of exist out there that we don't really see a whole lot of, right? What did you think about seeing the Headless Horseman? Or I guess we could talk about Krampus a little bit too, but what do you think about seeing some of these other like mythological creatures that like we know, but we don't really see it maybe being depicted as we do in this film?
It kind of reminded me of The Nightmare Before Christmas, because you know how it's like a forest or something where each tree has like the symbol of each holiday, and when you go through the portal, you end up seeing what life is like in Halloween Town or Christmas Town or something like that. So it's kind of that's what it made me think of. It made me think of how different characters and from different holidays and different mythologies kind of coexist with one another, and they sort of interact in one way or another. I did really like the Headless Horseman, the horse breathing fire. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I felt like it was a nod to the to that drugged out scene from Batman Begins. Remember where
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah. You remember that scene where Scarecrow's on the horse and Rachel's all doped out and she sees the horse breathing fire out of its nostrils. That's what it reminded me of. I do want to ask you this though, because we later find out that that Santa is working with a government agency called Mora, which is sort of like, I guess it's like SHIELD in that universe, where they have like relations and they maintain like close contact and monitoring of mythological creatures around the world.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that? Because I thought that was a bit of a weird move, to be honest.
It was, but at least it was something that I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, because I do agree with you that in this movie, it didn't really make a ton of sense because, we're just here for Santa. Like, we don't really need this other agency out there that's going to create it.
Yeah, and we don't need the world building, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no other really reference to it, right? Like, the only other characters we deal with are characters that, I mean, I think most people know Krampus, right? So, I think people are familiar enough with that, entity, to know about it. I know, like the main villain, right, Grilla. Probably, I don't know that from anything. So maybe you know what Grilla is. I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say the actress who plays Grilla, Kiernan Shipka, she was in the Netflix series The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and there was an episode, a Christmas special, where they actually dealt with Gryla the witch.
Really?
Yeah.
That is really interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. So when I saw Kiernan Shipka portraying Gryla, I was like, okay, everything's come full circle in a weird sort of way. Like she was on a series where she interacted with Gryla, and now she's become Gryla herself. So.
Interesting. All right. Well, I did not know that, and I'm glad that somebody did the research to figure that part out, because I sure did not. I was not aware of that, but that is very interesting that he would come around for that, especially because I imagine Gryla. Like I said, don't know much about that particular character. I can't imagine it comes up a whole lot and stuff, but hey.
Gryla. Yeah, at least in North American Christmas traditions, I mean, we know about Santa, and I guess if you come from a Scandinavian or Germanic background, you wouldn't know Krampus. Gryla is more of a character you'd be more familiar with if you lived in Europe, like Scandinavia, Germany, that part of Europe. It's not something that really got translated here. We're more focused on just the big guy himself, really.
Got it. Interesting. Well, hey, I guess this gives I guess I'll give this film a little bit of credit for helping broaden everyone's horizons to kind of some other beliefs out there that are related to the Christmas time. So I guess I will give you a very, very minor point, Red One, for helping do that, because I learned something new today on that one. So we have our leads get together. There was, I think, throughout the whole film, right? We're about 45 minutes in. I kind of smirked at this one joke, right? So I just wanted to go over it really quick, just because that's how little I've gotten out of the movie so far. It's just this interaction with Jack and Cal, where Jack is like, hey, what is Santa's mission? And Cal's response was to spread cheer, asshole. And I just had to kind of laugh at it because it was just so absurd. And I shouldn't say laugh. That's giving it a little bit too much credit. I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of humorous. Like, I get that joke. But it did bring up something very interesting, right? Because I thought to myself in that moment, like, okay, he's kind of using profanity, and I think there's maybe like two parts where there's a little bit of profanity, but not a lot. But I thought to myself, okay, so there's profanity in this, right? So it's not a Christmas film that you're gonna be like bring your kids to because you probably don't want them to be, watching and hearing this stuff.
Yeah, it's not like
And
it's not like a Charlie Brown Christmas or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
exactly, right? Like this is not something you're bringing like little kids to, but it's also not really adult enough. Like there's not enough of it. Like there's not a lot of like the action, there's not like a lot of violence or anything else. So my big thing is like, who's the audience for this? Like I just couldn't, I really couldn't figure out what it was that they're going for. Because to me, if you don't want to make it for little kids, right? To me, you have to make it the opposite, which is you have to give us a little bit more out of everything else. And it felt like they just didn't do that. So I don't know. What did you feel about, I guess, what they're trying to do with like the overall tone of this? Because it just seemed to be kind of all over the place. And I don't know who they're really trying to point this film at.
I mean, I honestly can't figure out if this is a movie that's trying to be funny or trying to be serious. That's my thing, because when they do try to make something funny, it's like it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, okay, I think that's interesting. Like the one that comes to mind is when Cal uses that little device to make the Hot Wheels thing into a real car, and Jack's like, oh, well, I want to see if maybe you could try it on Wonder Woman. I was like, okay, it's a bit tongue in cheek. I mean, yeah, a little bit of sexual humor going on, I guess. But at the same time, it's like you have Lucy Liu coming in trying to like act like a total badass, and Dwayne the Rock Johnson trying to take himself seriously as like treating this basically as if it were a Fast and Furious or Expendables movie. And
is it funny because it takes itself so seriously?
I mean, to use your parlance, I mean they really need to pick a lane and stick with it, because if they're gonna do something humorous, then commit to the bit. Don't try to be funny and then kind of give up halfway through, or don't try to be serious and then decide, mid-race, oh, you know what? I think maybe we should throw in a few jokes and kind of start taking ourselves a little less seriously. Because the entire time, I as I was watching it, I was just wondering, like, I get the only reason why we know it's a Christmas film is because it's got Santa in it, right?
Yes.
But for the most part, you're not really entirely sure if they're trying to make it family friendly with Jack's backstory of trying to have a relationship with his estranged son, or if it's Krampus trying to reconnect with Santa because they were brothers a long time ago, or if you just can't take your eyes off Kiernan Shipka because she looks like one sexy witch. So it's just one of those things where it's like you really can't figure out what this movie is trying to do in terms of its tone. I mean, in terms of visual aesthetic, it's excellent. I think they kind of put too much work into it, and they should have put work into what the storyline needs to be. But hey, it's not me, behind the keyboard, so I've got no dog in this fight. But at the same time, to your point, it's like when they were trying to figure out who it's for, I'm guessing someone was like, so is this for kids or for adults, or for adults with a childish sense of humor? And the writers were like, yes. When people ask you a question and the answer is like, yes, like I seriously thought that's what was going on behind the scenes. Like, people were probably asking, is this like a traditional Christmas film where kids can enjoy it? And they're like, yes. Oh, is this like a raunchy sort of Christmas movie where it's kind of like a mix between Bad Santa and Die Hard? Yes. And it's like, just, again, pick a lane and stick with it. Like, figure out who your audience. I think that's what the problem is that they couldn't figure out who their audience was, which is why they were all over the place in terms of what the tone was supposed to be. If they figured out, okay, we want it to be an adult humor film, then it would be a little bit more serious with maybe quips of a certain type that only you and I would get, but a kid wouldn't really understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if it was like a more kid friendly, they would have jokes that were easily accessible to kids, but adults could also understand it to a degree because hey, there's a kid in every adult. But which was another theme that they touched on. It was inside every adult there's a child who's just trying to regain his innocence, and I'm like, okay, so who's that for now? because you're trying to do all these things where everybody's just waiting to see Wonder Woman come to life, or we see Krampus slapping the absolute shit out of people, or or Jack trying to reconnect with the son, and then you had that that other thing kind of being dropped upon us, and you're like, well, you've got too many things going on now. Now we don't know what to focus on, because it's kind of taking you away from the main storyline. Like, I seriously forgot, like, midway that Santa had been kidnapped, because they were just so keen on dragging you to other plot points that you kind of forget until you get probably like 20 minutes near the end of the movie, and you're like, oh, that's right, they were trying to rescue Santa. Okay, I get it now.
It's funny you should say that, right? Because the movie goes like too fast in some places, and also like drags out in some places too.
I think the backstory with Jack and his kid, they kind of dragged it out a bit too much.
Yeah, because like it takes so long to get to some parts of the film, right? Because once we get to like the characters actually going on the mission to locate Santa, it just kind of goes all over the place, right? So you meet Nick Kroll, and I'm just going to call him Nick Kroll. His Dan probably was his character's name. I don't remember.
Yeah, Ted.
Ted. Thank you. So, but it's Nick Kroll. So like you have him, and then this is how we figure out that Gryla is, kind of at least has some part of this, and she's working with Krampus. So then they go to where Krampus is, and this is where we get the slap fight, right? Which, I guess that's, big right now is the slapping competitions you see out there. I don't know. Maybe Krampus, somebody could tell me like, oh yeah, well, Krampus, he always was about slapping people. I don't know. But you have this slapping competition, and it just feels like so much of it is like, we're just taking detours all over the place. We're going on these quests, and we're now sidetracked in this 2-hour film when we're just trying to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, right? And this is where we find out eventually, right after this 30 minutes of doing nothing, we find out that, Gryla, she's, helping create all these snow globes because she wants to capture all the naughty people that are out there. And we have this very rushed sequence, right, with Dylan, right, Jack's son, where he gets captured in a snow globe. And then Jack's like, hey, this is my kid. I got to go after him. So he also gets captured in the snow globe. Probably would have maybe waited a little bit and maybe put a little thought into it. I understand that it's his kid, and, from an audience perspective, you have to go save your kid. But maybe like take a few minutes just to kind of talk things through. That I think would have been very helpful, but I guess they just wanted to fast forward through that because, like, within, I don't know, this nice little 2-minute speech, it's like, oh, well, now we broke out of the snow globes. So is the snow globes really going to do anything if it takes no effort to get out of them other than just having a little Hallmark conversation? I don't know.
But they promised to be nice, and that's what broke the spell, Lee.
Once again, going with who is our audience for this? Because, if you're an adult, I just sat there and I was rolling my eyes like, oh, wow, we're really going with this, like, really childlike idea about what everything is. And it's just like, well, I've been a real shitty person and I've done all this bad stuff, but I guess just having a nice speech is enough to make me a good guy. So I guess setting the bar really low for that. So with any action related thing, the best way to resolve any issue is just to have a fight. So Jack and Cal end up getting into a fight with Gryla. We also see Krampus show up, and he gets the shit kicked out of him, kind of like the Hulk with Loki. That's how I kind of looked at it. I don't know if they're really going for that, but that's how I just kind of looked like it. So he gets his butt kicked. He makes a little offhand joke about their relationship, and that's how it is because they're bad people, so they must be in some type of weird abusive relationship. But luckily, the two of them are able to save the day. Jack jacked up Santa Claus is able to go on his mission to deliver all the presents. And we have this nice touching scene at the end where Cal sees the good in people again, because, oh yeah, that was a story too. Like, all these characters needed a story. So Cal was resigning from his position that he's been in there for many, many, I would say centuries, right? I think he said something like he's been there 300 years or something. I don't know. But he's been there for quite some time. And he's just been kind of like disillusioned with, people just being bad people. But he, sees Jack and is like, oh, this is the kid in us or something. And the movie ends. And I was just like, thank God it's over, because I just couldn't deal with it. So, what do you think about the ending, Luca?
I mean, the only thing I liked was that sequence where we get to see Santa kind of go from house to house.
That was imaginative, right?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that because it seemed like kind of basically pull an Ant-Man and like shrink down and grow and do all that stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I mean, but by that point, I pretty much checked out because it's like, because again, to your point, if you can't figure out who you're trying to direct the story to, then you can't really focus the story. Then you're all over the place. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I mean, here's a Christmas movie that's got, Chris Evans and, The Rock, and, they trade a few barbs and a few quips and they throw a few punches, but it's all good. And it's like, okay, well, that's great, I guess.
Yep. We've seen it 1,000 times. Just having it be on the backdrop of Christmas is not going to, I think, do anything different. I find it very shocking. I want to say when I looked at, what do you think the Rotten Tomatoes is for this right now? Specifically for our audience. What do you think?
I'm gonna say 48.
48%. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll start off with the critics, right? They're at 30%. The audience is at 90%.
Oh, damn. Okay.
90% for this film.
Well, to be fair, I mean, like I said at the beginning, it's one of those movies that you can just turn your brain off when you're watching.
Of course, right? But like, I can't imagine turning my brain off for this much. Now, yes, in the grand scheme of things with Rotten Tomatoes, I think there is a big misconception over what the scoring system means, right? It's not that it's 90% good. It just means that 90% of people think it's at least a 3 out of 5, right? Which is not exactly a high bar. But still, it is just, it's just goofy, right? And I wish there was times where it was like, okay, cool, we're doing some different things. Like, hey, it's interesting to see, the Headless Horseman, right? Is there something there that you could do with them? Of course not, right? Like, there is an opportunity there. Why not bring in other mythological creatures if you want to do something like this? Like, give us something a little bit different, right? We've seen Krampus depicted in a lot of things. So I think that he's very much kind of fleshed out the stage. And Gryla is just a human witch, right? Like, she's not a very interesting to look at character. I will give them some credit, though. I think that there are some visual elements that are very cool. So I will give, I guess, the team that worked on that something to, I guess, we'll sit here and talk about, how bad the writing is or how, boring the story is. And we could talk about all that stuff, but at least there were some visual elements that I was pleasantly surprised with. But it feels like maybe that should have had a different focus instead of getting the writers off of Wish.com. Because
I mean, it was kind of unnecessary when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. Because as good as it was, I felt like for a movie like that, it was really kind of wasted.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. It absolutely was wasted because it made me actually be curious. Like, what happens if we had some, like, I don't want to use the term universe because everyone's going to kind of like cringe at that. But I think it would be cool to get some of these other mythological creatures to kind of see a more updated version on it with how it looks today, right? When I saw the Headless Horseman, I'm like, dang, you know what? If I saw a movie with that in there, I think I would actually kind of just, like, it would capture my interest just solely off of the look of it, right? kind of like what was it, Sleepy Hollow, right? So that kind of dealt with the Headless Horseman as well, in a very grounded thing. But that was, geez, when did that film come out, Luca? Do you remember when Sleepy Hollow come out?
I think it was like 98 or 99.
Yeah, I mean that's been out for quite some time.
But
So
it was a really good, but it was a really good movie, and just just in terms of the visual effects, it was phenomenal
Yeah.
for that time.
Right. And that's 25 years ago, to make us all feel old, right? 25 years ago that came out. And I think it would be interesting to see some of that stuff because, like I said, I like that design. I thought it was cool. I was like, dang, I really wish they kind of utilized that some way. But we didn't. So yeah, I'm gonna give my final score for this, Luca, because it didn't really do anything for me. You actually are gonna help blow up the score a little bit because I didn't know what Gryla was, and to know that there was maybe like a legitimate connection with like other beliefs when it came to it, it was something at least interesting to learn about this. So I'll give just a tiny iota of credit. But for everything else, I just couldn't really get over it. I didn't really find it funny. I think maybe I smirked once or twice. But if I'm going to be watching a comedy, I would expect a lot more than that. The action sequences weren't all that special. Like there's the fight with like the snowmen, and it's just kind of like whatever. The slap contest, which is nothing. I mean, I guess the chase sequence out of the North Pole had some visual flair to it, but I mean, it just, I don't know who it was for. I don't know how many people were able to turn off their brains. It looks like a lot more than me and you, but I'm going to give the score, I'm going to give it a 1.8 out of 5. There just wasn't a whole lot for me there. I think that there was a huge opportunity to do something different. And I wish, like, if you're just going to go for like an adult Christmas thing, then just go for it, right? Like just have a bunch of swearing, right? Have, Krampus sitting there and just like splitting open people, right? Just go in one direction, make it something memorable. Cause I feel like when you just go for average, you just hit nothing, right? And it's just going to kind of slowly fade into nothing. Whereas if it was at least like over the top bad, it'd be like, okay, well, you might get a cult following, but I don't know who's going to be like year after year being like, oh yeah, I can't wait to watch Red.
Yeah, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. I will say this, like I genuinely admired the special effects in that movie, even though I felt it was wasted. They kind of it's kind of the equivalent of having MCU level graphics for a Hallmark movie. You know what I mean? I will say this, like the storyline is very similar to another Tim Burton classic, which I mentioned earlier, The Nightmare Before Christmas. So it's not like they're really doing anything new with it. They're just taking old story beats and kind of quote unquote updating it for the modern audience. And I was going to say, like, if you do want to watch a properly good movie about Santa being kidnapped, and then the kidnapper redeeming himself, I would wholly recommend watching The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's far better executed than what we see here. I mean, it's one of those movies where where when you watch it, you just sit back and you're like, okay, that's cool. I guess that's just another new movie that came out for the Christmas holiday, and then you put it on the shelf or wherever and you forget about it. It's not really, I mean, narratively, it's not strong. I think you and I have kind of beaten that horse to a pulp
That's
at
putting
that
it
point.
nicely.
But it's, but I will say, I mean, J.K. Simmons, I think he does a phenomenal job as Kris Kringle. I'll give him props for that. I did find Chris Evans, to be slightly amusing because this entire time, like, he's sort of been typecast as the goody two shoes as Captain America. So him kind of taking on a role as a bit of a cad who goes around doing all these awful things, I thought was pretty interesting because he does want to get away from being linked to the all-American hero.
Yeah.
The first Avenger, as they would say in the MCU. So I will give him props for for trying something new and not sticking to the same old that he's been doing before. But I mean, it's one of those. At the end of the day, it's one of those movies that you're just going to forget about. It's not. I mean, it's not like. I mean, it's not like the other Christmas classics that that we love to watch, like Die Hard or It's a Wonderful Life or Miracle on 34th Street, where they just have staying power because they speak to us. The message that they have is timeless. Here, if you're looking for a message in the movie, you're either gonna be very confused or you're gonna be very frustrated, because you'll either find it or you're basically gonna find something out of nothing and try to extrapolate meaning from it. It's one of those things where you kind of just have to accept it for what it is at the end of the day, which is it's just bubblegum entertainment. It's not there to be broken down or analyzed. It's just there for you to enjoy and forget about it. So, but yeah, go ahead and let us know down in the comments below what your thoughts are on Red 1. Did you enjoy it or did you find it a bit annoying? And if you're enjoying the content, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We are looking to grow our audience, so hitting that subscribe button would definitely help us out a lot. And we are coming with more content as we speak. So please just keep us in mind if you ever are looking at a movie and you're wondering, I wonder what people think about this, because we do have opinions and sometimes we can be very detail oriented. So if you like that kind of stuff, check us out. And as always, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.